get all cleaned up and put away.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome back to another live stream. Today, we're talking more IHSS stuff. We're talking about Protect Supervision and some of the other categories, and we're going to go over some of those differences. And so welcome to those of you who are just tuning in. Sorry, I'm going to fix my camera a little bit. You know, like that, right there. Boom. All right, so welcome to those who are coming in from YouTube and from Facebook to watch this stream. Like always, let me know if you guys can hear my microphone okay, if you can hear my voice. Let me know if I need to slow down. I don't have any lagging today, which is great. This is the first time in a while. So even though it's been rainy and muggy up here in Northern California, connection seems to be good. So welcome to those who are here. Like, you already know the drill. If you've been here before, please give me a like or a love if you can. And by me, I mean Galt Advocacy in the stream. Comment in the comment section. Let me know what's going on in your lives. If you guys are having a good day or a bad day, tell me what's going on. If you guys are going through the IHSS process, appeal process, application process, maybe you have questions about regional center, education, let's talk about it. I want to know what's going on in your lives. Brenda, you said we're good. Sweet. Thank you for that. Hopefully it continues to stay good. I have a habit whenever I do pull this mic out. I really like this microphone, but I have a habit of accidentally pushing the mute button. So hopefully that doesn't happen today. Brenda, you should share to 5 IHSS groups. Way to go. Thank you. Hopefully we get a cool little group today. Again, not so much for us, but for you guys. So the more I talk, the more questions come up that you get to read and then realize there's a lot of people out there asking the same questions as you. And it's really cool to see people in the comment section answer a question before I even get to it. And so hopefully that can happen today as well, a little bit, right? I will do my best to answer everybody's questions. We do have a topic, of course. So the topic today, let me pull that one up. So the topic is going to be in regards to the difference between IHSS ADL tasks and protective supervision. Okay. And so if you know anything about IHSS, you know that it is a category program, or it's a caregiving program broken down by a series of categories. And so we're going to talk about that today. Okay. And like always, we'll just give it a few more minutes because this is a live stream. So we'll let people find it. I'm going to get ready on my side here. Thanks for being here, everybody. Happy Friday. Cassie, I'm doing well. Hello to you. How the heck are you? Good morning, Valeria. Good afternoon. Yes, it's muggy and rainy out here. We're all up in Northern California. We're kind of in the Bay Area, Sacramento. If you're not from the north side of California, mid to north, right? We're not super far north. We're Bay Area, but definitely muggy and rainy out here for sure. It's definitely tea weather. I've already had a couple of cups of coffee today, and so it's cold-ish, and so I'm opting out of my daily Coke Zero today that you guys normally see me sipping on, and switching it over to some tea. It's probably healthier anyway. Valeria, hello, everybody. Cassie is surviving. I hear you. I think we can all resonate with that. Oh, nice. Brenda, you're up in Reading? Cool. Let me know how Reading is. I will say my experience when it comes to like working with social workers from Reading and the IHSS office. Goods and bads. Goods and bads. Rosita, hello to you. Good afternoon. Raining over here in the IE. Inland Empire? Is that what that is? I'm a Northern California Bay Area native, and so I know nothing about SoCal. My dad was from SoCal. He grew up in La Puente, but I'm imagining IE is Inland Empire. I love mornings as well. Coffee all day. Yeah. Well, I do drink a good amount of coffee. As you guys know, I come on here super stoked every single week, lots of energy. And that's not because I'm just naturally energized. No, just fueled by a gallon of coffee. I got to turn this thing on. There we go. I like this thing on the side. You have a good social worker so far. Thank God. That's great. Feel free to share with us your experience so far in Reading with your social worker in that office up there. Cass, you said I'm in the Los Angeles area. And the social workers out here are tough. Yeah. So LA County is kind of a different world. It's a different beast in its own. There's 9 offices, if I recall. Lots and lots of social workers. And when you have a county that size, you're gonna run into some tough stuff. That's for sure. Okay, so shall we jump into today's topic? I think we have a good chunk of people already. And so thank you for sharing the stream, liking it like you guys always do. That's always a really big help. Let me know if you have any actual questions. You're welcome to continue sharing about the rain and where you're at. I love it. But if you do have questions, I will do my best to try and stop everything and answer your question. Not do my best. I will. I do that every week, guys. Come on. You already know. So welcome back if you're new. Or I'm sorry, welcome back if you're not new. Welcome if you are new. Stick around. We're talking IHSS today, okay? So something that oftentimes gets confused is whether or not, I'll start with this, protective supervision being IHSS or separate from IHSS. So I'm going to make it really simple, or at least I'm going to try. So IHSS is a caregiving benefit that we know, right? Where a caregiver, a loved one or a parent of a special needs child or a loved one, you get to be paid as a caregiver for them. And how you get paid is through this IHSS program. So IHSS will grant this individual a specific amount of hours per month. And so these hours are going to be based on their level of care. And so that level of care can be in the form of protective supervision. It can be in the form of bowel and bladder care, meal preparation, and so on, right? So protective supervision is not something separate from IHSS. It's just another category, just like meal prep, cleaning, laundry, using the restroom, ambulation, all of these things. These are all categories of this program, including protective supervision. Okay. Now, a lot of people will pursue IHSS in hopes to obtain protective supervision, but get kind of shocked when the social worker doesn't bring it up at the home assessment. Or maybe you'll bring it up at the home assessment. You heard about it and you're like, hey, I want to talk about this. But then your social worker says, whoa, oh my gosh, I wasn't prepared for that. Whoa, that's like a separate thing. We got to go through these hoops. You got to get this from the doctor or whatever. I'm here to tell you that if you have a child who is intellectually disabled, mentally impaired in some capacity, they have to assess for protective supervision. It should never be a shock to a social worker. It should never be this big roundabout process that they have to go above and beyond to help you assess for. No, if the child is under 18 and they are mentally impaired and you are having an assessment with IHSS, protective supervision must be assessed. Okay. That doesn't mean that you can't ask for it. A lot of people do. Some social workers will assume that they don't qualify because you didn't bring it up, which is wrong. It shouldn't have to be that way. But just because they don't bring it up doesn't mean that you shouldn't. You should. Okay. Now, ADLs, we've talked a little bit about protective supervision. Protective supervision is the category with the program that means you need 24 hours supervision. Okay. I'm going to pull this banner up here. So PS, protective supervision, it means that this loved one, this child with autism, this adult with Down syndrome, your elderly grandparent with dementia, they are unsafe, unsupervised because of their cognitive limitations. They are mentally impaired and or mentally ill, right? And so if you have a loved one or a child or somebody in your life that they are mentally impaired to the point where they are unsafe if left unsupervised, then they might qualify for protective supervision, okay? Protective supervision is 195 hours per month with IHSS, 195. It's either all or nothing. You can't get a little bit of it. You can't get a lot of it. It's either all of it or zero. Okay. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago as well. And so a lot of people will confuse the needs between getting approved for ADL task categories and protective supervision. Okay. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between these areas of the program and maybe some things that you can do to kind of maximize both areas. And let me know if anybody has any questions here. Valeria, you said you're in the Orange County area. Nice. I like Orange County. That office for IHSS is actually not bad. We've had issues. Also, you know what? We have had some struggles in previous years, but they've gotten a lot better. And that was primarily like procedural issues. It wasn't necessarily like social workers. It was procedural problems. Valerie, I'm new to IHSS, about to turn in the application. Nice. I am glad you're here because I'd love to help you if I can. You said also my mom has moderate dementia, 24/7 care. Your mom might need something like protective supervision. You're more than welcome to ask questions here if we want to find that out, but it is best probably for us to have a one-on-one. So if you ever want to just reach out to our office and book a spot on my calendar, I'm happy to chat with you about your mom and see if this is see where she would qualify within the program. I can figure that out pretty quickly on the phone. Cassie, quick question. When the court hearing is done, are they typically in person or done on Zoom? So right now, you have three options. You can do an in-person hearing with a judge, you could do a Zoom virtual, or you can do it over the phone like a conference call where the judge just calls everybody and you all get on a big conference line. So our office, when we're representing families, we will only do it for the most, not only, but we will usually be doing a conference call. And it's not because that's like a special strategy or one is better than the other. It's just what's most convenient for us and our clients usually. It's also very convenient for a judge and the social workers. It just seems to be the less, or I'd say the most casual, the less intimidating. It also makes it, I would say, just a little bit easier to get through. Yeah, but it's up to you. In person can be the most intimidating. And judges don't really care for in person as much these days. So most of the time, it's either going to be on Zoom or over the phone. Great question. All right. So we talked briefly about protect supervision. Let's jump into ADLs. ADLs, activities of daily living. So when you are applying for IHSS, there's going to be 4 sections of categories. Now, these are not IHSS's 4 sections. This is not how they describe it. This is how I describe it. So it's not exactly how it works, but it's what makes the most sense to me. And this is how I educate a lot of the families that I work with. And so there's 4 sections. The first section is going to be the domestic related task services. That's going to be the big stuff that they reserve for adults: meal prep, meal cleanup, doing the laundry, errands, yard work, that kind of stuff. And then you have the second section. This is the ADLs. These are the activities of daily living. And so these are going to be the kind of the daily things. And technically ADLs are actually both sections 1 and 2. So section 2 is actually the personal care and the hygiene tasks. So this is the day-to-day stuff that this person needs, like bowel and bladder care, using bathing, grooming, dressing, things like that. And so both of these areas are sort of still considered ADLs in some ways, but primarily ADLs are going to be referenced to the personal care and hygiene areas. And so, excuse me. Oh, thank you, Teresa, for dropping that information. Cassie, thank you. I lost my train of thought. Where the heck was I? ADLs, the differences. Anyways, and so when you have an assessment, IHSS is going to go down the line of all these different task categories. Okay, so they'll start with, again, the basic day-to-day stuff, the hygiene, the toileting, the dressing, all that. And so these are separate categories. All of these categories are individual. And so what they do is the social worker will go through each category and rank this child or this loved one individually. And so there is a ranking system with IHSS. That's how they determine the hours. It's not based on how long it takes you to get little Johnny dressed in the morning. It's not based on how long it takes to bathe little Johnny because he's an eloper and he's constantly, fighting in bath time. It's not based on how long it takes generally. It's usually going to be based on a rank, and that rank determines the time. It's usually like a fixed amount or kind of a tiered amount, if you will. In case you missed it, Teresa did drop our phone number to our office in the comments. So if you want to book an appointment with me on my calendar just to chat, do it, please. I'd love to speak with anybody who wants to. And again, you're welcome, Cassie, and thank you for being here. All right. So ADLs at the end of the day are hands-on physical tasks that a caregiver has to perform for the client because they are unable to do them on their own. Okay. And so this applies to at any age group. So a young child all the way up through adulthood into elderlyhood. ADLs can be applied to anyone who who requires that support. Okay. The difference here, though, is when you are a minor, these ADL task categories will be assessed based on the age and what's considered typical and not typical. Okay. So we all know that IHSS, kind of like rule number one, you can't deny somebody based on their age. Okay. However, the hours can be predicted a little bit depending on how old your child is. Because they do have to consider what's typical and what's not typical, right? A 2-year-old, for example, is not going to get time in the bowel and bladder category. Normally, they wouldn't, because 2-year-olds typically are not potty trained completely at that point. Maybe they're working on it, right? That's still really young, but it's not uncommon for a 2-year-old to still be in diapers. It's probably more common than not, right? So they would start, potty training usually starts and gets sort of like, I'd say polished in a way over the next couple of years. So when the child hits around 4 or 5 years old, you should expect your child, if they're hitting their milestones and everything else is relatively typical, then potty training should be something, making some progress on. And so if you have a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old who has autism or some type of disability, and they still are in diapers and they're still requiring a significant amount of help there, then that's not typical. That is where time would come in for a task like that. And that is, again, the ADL tasks. Cassie, how is the child ranked? So there's a ranking system. I actually went over this maybe a couple of months ago now, I think. I'll briefly tap into it. So the ranking system is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or 5, excuse me. So the social worker will go down the list of categories. And based on the level of need, that's going to determine what rank your child's going to get for that task. And so the ranks are relatively straightforward if you want to look them up. But rank 1 means that this child doesn't need any help, or it's age appropriate, meaning that whatever type of help they need, that's typical for that age, right? So for example, a 10-year-old, when it comes to the task of meal preparation, is going to be ranked 1. Not because they can do it themselves, but because it is age appropriate for a 10-year-old to need help in the meal prep category, right? We wouldn't be allowing our 10-year-olds to make meals for the household. Maybe they're learning, right? Maybe they can throw toast in the toaster, maybe whip up some eggs, right? That's fine. But to have your 10-year-old relying on themselves to feed themselves on a daily basis, that's not typical, right? So they usually will reserve a task like that until age 17, unless there's like a really big, like a medical need, unless there's a significant extraordinary need is the term that they like to use at IHSS. And so, how is the child ranked? It's based on the ranking system that they have that defines each rank. So 1 is doesn't need any help, or it's just age appropriate. Rank 2 means they can do it themselves, but they need verbal prompting, verbal guiding, verbal reminding. Rank 3 means they can do it with the verbal prompting and reminding, but they need some physical help at some point during the task. Rank 4 is kind of a flip-flop of 3. So again, rank 3 is they can do it with verbal prompting, but they need some physical. Rank 4 is substantial physical, meaning that a lot of the task you are physically involved to make sure it gets done appropriately. And then rank 5 is complete dependence on the caregiver, full service, full physical support on the caregiver. And so based on whichever rank they get for that category, that's going to determine how much time is in that category. I hope that helps. So to go over what a specific ADL category is, I'm going to name them out real quick, okay? We have bathing and oral hygiene and grooming. We have dressing. We have toilet care, which is bowel and bladder care. We have feeding. We have mobility. That's going to be like transferring off and on furniture, ambulation, so like walking to and from places, repositioning if the child is or loved one is bedbound. Again, we're not just talking about children. We're talking about all ages here. Then we would have the more domestic side of things. So meal preparation, meal cleanup, housework related tasks like laundry, yard work, things of that nature. We also would lump in like errands and grocery shopping, things like that. And then you also have the paramedical services. So paramedical services would be tasks that would typically be done in a doctor's office, or medication treatments, things of that nature. I got you. I got you. All right. How we doing so far? Teresa, am I on task today as far as what our topic is? I want to make sure. that I'm not missing anything. Because I'm about to go into some of the big differences in how we don't use ADL tasks for the purpose of protective supervision, which I think was a big point for today's outline. So, Evelyn, can you elaborate on paramedical? Sure, I could try. So paramedical is going to be based on what the IHSS rules say, paramedical is going to be anything that's intrusive or medical in nature. So that would be physical therapy, that would be injections, that would be anything that would require a doctor or a nurse in like a doctor's office. So that could also be like blood pressure stuff. It could be blood sugar monitoring, all of these types of things. So there is a section where is it? Disability Rights California, I think, has it. No, CDSS website. So on the CDSS website, there's a paramedical section. So if you Google IHSS paramedical services or use ChatGPT IHSS paramedical services, it'll give you a list of all of the things that are considered paramedical. And so I would recommend that you do that. If you have a child or a loved one with high medical needs, I would look at those qualifying factors there and pick them out. If you find something in that list and you're like, oh my gosh, I do that for my child or I do that for my loved one, boom, pull it out, figure out what exactly you do with them with that task, and then let your social worker know. I don't know what you posted, Teresa, but I'm pinning it anyway. Karina, do you know about how long the Protect Supervision request process takes? It's been 4 weeks and it's been with the supervisor. My social worker just keeps saying there are 2,000 cases with only 2 supervisors and they don't have a timeline for a new NOA. So what do the regulations say? Newsflash, not to you, Karina, but to everybody, IHSS rarely follows their own guidelines and deadlines. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say that. And it's not because they don't want to. It is because of the issue you're highlighting here in the comment. Okay. They are overworked. They are overworked and understaffed. However, that is a they problem. That's a them problem. That's not a you problem. And so it is frustrating when the state doesn't fix anything about this, because not all counties are like this. Not every county has the same problem as bigger counties like LA or San Francisco, San Bernardino, San Diego even. It is an excuse for them to delay, unfortunately. And until it gets resolved, that's just what we're going to see. So to answer your question as best I can, they do have 45-day and 90-day deadlines for things. That's kind of the basic deadline periods. So they have 90 days to make a decision after an assessment is complete, technically, before you can make a big fuss, which is frustrating because it shouldn't take 3 months to make a determination on protect supervision. I usually can figure it out on a 30-minute phone call. I can usually make a determination pretty quick because I don't like the whole, there's a huge gray area with protect supervision. Yes, there is in some sense, but it is also very black and white. There's criteria questions, and if you meet the criteria questions, as long as you have some evidence that points in the same direction, you should get protective supervision. But how long does it take? I would say give it, it's only been 4 weeks. That's a totally normal timeline. Okay. So 4 weeks is not super long. It's still long. Trust me, I understand, but it's not technically long for the county. And so I would say give it another couple of weeks. If you haven't heard anything, that's when I would start doing weekly follow-ups. Weekly follow-ups just to check in. And if it's been 2.5 months and they still haven't done anything yet, now it's time to start considering maybe filing a complaint or kind of like an appeal on a late notice. What was the fourth? Valeria, thank you for reminding me. It's protective supervision. So we have the domestic related services, the personal care and hygiene. So these are the ADLs, paramedical as well. And then we have protective supervision. So the last section number 4, just has one category, PS. Evelyn, can someone with IBS, constipation needs medications and constant cleaning be paramedical? Yeah, so it could be. It just kind of depends on the specific task itself. So it depends on how you are managing or mitigating the symptoms of IBS, the ramifications of it, right? So medication, I think is what you said. You said mediation, but I'm assuming you mean medication and constant cleaning. If it's being done in a medical way, then yes. However, you would have to get the doctor to agree to that. So I would recommend reaching out to the doctor and seeing what they say about it. Cassie loves ChatGPT. Use it all the time. Technology's crazy, isn't it? It's a pretty wild stuff. Thank you, Evelyn, for being here. Appreciate it. Teresa, this will break down age-appropriate guidelines. Here's the link. Thank you, Teresa. Appreciate it. Thank you, Karina. Okay. Once again, don't forget, give this video a like and a share. Tag a support group if you can. Tag a friend. Anybody who might need some help on the IHSS side of things or education, regional center, we can chat with you about it all. But if there's anything in this particular topic today that you can think of that might benefit somebody, please tag them or share the stream if you can. Okay. So another big difference here that we can go over is the difference between like who qualifies for ADLs and how that reflects protective supervision eligibility. Okay. So protective supervision eligibility is going to be solely based on cognitive limitations, like I referenced earlier. Whereas ADLs, that's going to be everything physical about this individual, not like physical disabilities per se, but what are they physically incapable of doing themselves, right? And so that could also be like a lack of understanding of how to do something. But ADLs, again, are going to be about those daily activities. Whereas protective supervision is, can this person understand how to keep themselves safe? And so a lot of people will assume that you need a lot of ADL hours in order to qualify for protective supervision, and that's just not true. So there can be people with 0 ADL hours, but also get protective supervision. And there are people who can get maxed out in the ADLs and have 0 protective supervision, right? Wait, did I say that right? I'll repeat myself because I think I said it wrong. There are people who might have 0 ADL hours, but they do get protective supervision. I think that's right. And then there are people with the opposite, where they have the maximum hours of ADLs, but they don't get approved for protective supervision. They get 0 hours there. And that is because, again, they're 2 totally separate needs, 2 totally separate things. They do not depend on each other. Now, I have heard some crazy things over the years. There is a county, I will just name, Alameda County. If you are in Alameda County, if you're a social worker, if you work there, or if you're a parent or a loved one in Alameda County, and that's where your IHSS office is, I have a very interesting one for you. This is one of the very first assessments I ever went on with a family that I was working with years ago. And the social worker said that because of the level of ADL approval, basically this person, they could do some things on their own. So they were going to get kind of a lower ranking on the ADLs. Because of that, they automatically didn't get approved for protective supervision. And the social worker explained that that's how they were trained. And I am here to tell you that is not how it works. Just because you get a low rank in an ADL, or maybe you don't get approved for an ADL, that should never impact your ability to get protective supervision. However, I will say there are lots of factors that can impact protective supervision. And that's going to be around areas of memory, orientation, and judgment, which we can go over a little bit as well. But if you can do some of these tasks on your own, you can get dressed in the morning just fine. You can use the restroom just fine, but you still can't be left alone. That doesn't mean that can still mean you can get protective supervision. It's kind of a complex. I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this without making it like super confusing, but ADLs shouldn't impact your eligibility for protective supervision. They can in some ways, but they shouldn't. Hopefully that is clear. So I found a cool little point on this outline. Sorry, I'm trying to relay it in here. So one quick thing I wanted to mention is disability. So a lot of people ask about, what disability or what condition diagnosis could somebody have to get something like protective supervision? So the rules say it has to be a mental impairment and or a mental illness. Okay. So a mental impairment would be like intellectual disability, a global developmental delay, something of that nature. So that could also be things like autism or Down syndrome, even though technically Down syndrome is a physical disability, but I think you get the point. People who are intellectually disabled, people who are cognitively limited. That categorized as a mental impairment. The mental illness side, that's going to be for elderly people with dementia or people who have schizophrenia, people who have severe severe bipolar. I've even seen people with severe ADHD or OCD get protective supervision. I had a client years ago who had OCD to the point where they would harm themselves, like quite literally. I can't really get into the details of it, but they would quite literally harm themselves, and that was a part of their OCD condition. They couldn't control it. I mean, their diagnosis was deeper than just OCD, but that was a big reason why they got approved for it. It would be extremely difficult to get approved for that today because the climate of protective supervision right now is way stricter and really unfair at the moment. So everybody's having to fight for it. Everybody's having to fight for it more than they've ever had to before. And so these are the mental impairments, mental illnesses that we refer to when maybe encouraging somebody to pursue IHSS. If you are physically disabled, if you have a child or a loved one who has cerebral palsy or some type of oh my gosh, we're drawing a blank here. Let me see. Maybe my notes can help me. Yeah, cerebral palsy, mobility issues, anything that's physical, right? They would qualify more for those reasons in the ADL categories. That has nothing to do with protective supervision. Okay. So if another reason why some people get these confused, protective supervision is not going to be for things like unable to feed yourself. So a lot of people will often use that as like a reason for protective supervision. They'll say, if I leave Johnny home alone, he's not going to feed himself all day long. Is that a reason for protective supervision? Not really. That is a feeding category need. That is a meal prep category need. So protective supervision is, although that's a good argument, like I like to use that as a reason, that is covered under that particular task. So if you're paid as the caregiver to make sure that he's got food and that his meals are prepped, that's what you get paid for. Protective supervision is not going to be based on something like that, right? A lot of people will argue too, like, oh, my Johnny wouldn't take a bath. He would go weeks without bathing if nobody was there to care for him. Once again, kind of subjective. How is that going to be inherently dangerous? Some would say infection. Some would say cleanliness can be that problem. And I agree to some extent, but it's usually just going to be used as an ADL need versus a protective supervision need. So ADL limitations very rarely is ever going to be used as a reason for protective supervision. I hope that helps. Let me know if anybody has any questions so far. I've been rambling a while. So I kind of wanted to go back to protect supervision for a moment. If anybody has questions specifically about PS or the ADLs, please let me know. Happy to address. And so with protective supervision, a lot of people also ask, like, behaviorally, what are some of the behaviors or reasons somebody could qualify for protective supervision? And so some of the basic ones off the top of my head are going to be maladaptive behaviors related to the disability, right? Whether that be the autism or dementia, whatever it may be, wandering without any destination in mind, or again, wandering without the ability to assess danger. Right? So if you have a little one who is an escape artist, they're a runner, they're an eloper, and they're gone, boom, every chance they get. Or you have maybe an elderly family member who wakes up at 2 a.m. and tries to go on a walk with no shoes on, and they're in their skivvies, right? Nightgown. We probably would not want to leave that person home alone anymore. And so wandering, eloping, anything that's like eating non-food items, I think... Teresa said, eating non-food items, bones, napkins, still meal category, or PS. Well, so I would say behaviorally, that would be a protective supervision. That would be a non-self-directing behavior. So if this person that you're caring for, this child or this adult loved one who's mentally impaired, if they're eating non-food items like attempting to eat bones or napkins, if they're doing that as a manifestation of their disability, then that is absolutely a reason for PS. So that is a little different from actual meal preparation. That's a little different from the feeding category. So yes, that to me is a protective supervision need rather than the meal prep, cleanup category. However, that on its own is not going to get you protective supervision. It has to be much bigger than that. So that is a great piece of evidence you can have if that is like a behavior that your loved one has. But there needs to be a variety of ways that they would be putting themselves in danger, not just the non-food behavior. Cassie, my child chews on power cords and phone chargers. Would that count? All right, I'm going to pick on you, Cassie. Your question is, my child chews on power cords and phone chargers. Would that count for PS? If you know your child who is autistic or intellectually disabled, whatever they may be, chews on these things, why are they out and about? Now, again, I'm only picking on you. I'm not actually trying to be condescending. I'm just testing you a little bit, okay? So I'm just kind of giving you sneak peeks here, how actual conversations with IHSS may look like, okay? So if I'm a social worker, my first question, or a judge even, is, well, if they do those things, why are they there? Why are they not put up high? Why aren't they taken away? If it's that much of a concern, wouldn't you just be on top of putting them away every single time they're not being used? Right? So is it a reason? Yes. Is it something you can use for the purpose of protective supervision? Yes. Just be mindful. Every behavior you present, like this one, like the one Teresa mentioned about non-food items, there's always going to be so why don't you do this to prevent that from happening? If you can prevent or eliminate a behavior based on something that you do, then you no longer qualify for protective supervision according to IHSS. So a lot of people will get denied protective supervision because they say that their child's an eloper, but they have locks, cameras, baby gates, and their child never elopes anymore because they've done their job. They've done their job at making their house foolproof, right? So a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, then you eliminated the behavior. You don't need protective supervision because the cameras, the baby gate, the locks, those things are providing protective supervision, right? So going back to your point here, right, your question, let's say you remove the power cords, you remove the phone chargers. If you didn't have any of those things in your house, which I know is unrealistic, but hypothetically, if you did, would your child then at that point need the same level of supervision as the rest of the children his age who are neurotypical? If that fixes the problem, then that's not a reason for protective supervision. Sorry, on its own. But great question, everybody. I'm really glad you guys are all here like you always are. Phenomenal questions. Teresa, thank you again for helping out so far. Sticking around. All right, sorry. Kind of going off track a little bit with my outline today. I'm trying to stay on track, but you guys always have great conversation. Great conversation starters. Great questions. So to kind of further the point on protect supervision and who qualifies for it. So to qualify for protect supervision, the client must need watchful oversight 24/7 because their judgment is impaired, not because their body is limited. Okay. So if your child needs monitoring to prevent unsafe behaviors and harm, that is protective supervision. If they can understand danger, yet they still engage in it, we now have to question, is that non-self-directed or is that just a misbehaving child, right? So it's all about assessing and understanding danger and then the act of potentially putting yourself in danger. That's protective supervision. But it's entirely going to be based on the person's impaired judgment. That's what it's going to be primarily based upon, okay? So a lot of people will also confuse physical mobility issues with protective supervision. So if you have a child, I'll give some other reasons, like are things that does not pertain to protective supervision. So a lot of people will say, well, my little Johnny is in a wheelchair, yet he constantly tries to stand up. He doesn't understand his physical limitations. excuse me, if little Johnny has a mental impairment, then that can be used for protective supervision. But if they're not mentally impaired, then it's about understanding the physical limitation. That's really what it comes down to. So protective supervision is not going to be for fall risks, heart attacks, the anticipation of a medical emergency, or things like seizures or suicidal ideations. Has nothing to do with those things. Or if again you have grandma who tries to constantly stand up and walk because they're stubborn, it's not going to be for that. It's not going to be for the slip and the fall. And so that would be under something like ambulation or the category of transfer. So it's going to go back to the ADLs. Teresa, Dakota, which is one of the advocates here, shout out to Dakota, who hasn't texted me back in a day and a half. Just kidding. Dakota says modifications cannot be used to remove protective supervision unless it completely removes the need for someone to still be watching the person. That is powerful stuff. And Dakota is absolutely right. Thank you, Teresa, for sharing that. So a lot of you who've probably seen the Facebook groups and other people's examples and stories, household modifications is a big issue. Because a lot of social workers will point out and say, you have the baby gate and that solves the problem, right? You have a lock, you have a camera, a Ring doorbell camera. And so those are all household modifications. So what Dakota is saying and Teresa reiterating is these modifications cannot be used to remove or deny protective supervision unless it completely removes the need for that person to still be monitored 24/7, right? So the key here is this. If you have a camera, you have a lock, you remove the knobs off the stove, you have an extra gate in front of your door. What's another thing? You have a gate around your pool, right? All of these things are household modifications. If you can say that because of all these modifications, I now can leave my child or my loved one unsupervised, then yes, that would be the definition of somebody being able to completely prevent harm, okay? That person no longer technically qualifies for protective supervision because the household modifications are eliminating the possibility of them getting hurt. However, that's not very realistic, right? It is very rare for somebody to need protective supervision where a household modification automatically eliminates their need for supervision anymore, right? Usually when somebody says that they have a lock or a camera on their door to prevent eloping, they'll say it doesn't fix the behavior. It doesn't eliminate it completely. It helps slow them down, but they still can bypass that. It doesn't mean I can't supervise it. My level of supervision does not change regardless of the modification. That's the key right there. Okay. So most people will say that locks and cameras help it helps mitigate the issue, the behavior, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate it entirely. Right? So hopefully that helps. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Dakota. Shout out to Dakota if he's watching. Dakota, text me back. Thank you, Cassie. Who wants Dakota on here some more? We need Dakota. We need Dakota. My partner in crime. It's always fun doing these lives with him. Hopefully he'll be able to jump on with me soon, and not just for Q&A, even though those are the most fun. So if we all want Dakota to join us here, you guys see him in the videos. We post the like little reels. I was trying to think of the term reels. That gentleman is Dakota most of the time. So shout out to him, and please shout him out in the comments if you guys want to see Dakota more often. Dakota is an incredible individual, very, very wise when it comes to the regulations of IHSS. He's one of the most knowledgeable people on this topic over anybody else that I know. One of, that's for sure. So I love having him on here because he can take care of answers and questions that I may not have the answer to. Brenda, especially a person with sundowners, nothing helps. Oof, that's a good point. So for those who are not familiar with sundowners, that's when behaviors and cognitive limitations tend to kind of dissipate or go in a certain direction based on when the sun's going down. So very common for people with dementia, very common for people who are mentally ill, and so forth. But yes, you're right. That is a really tricky one because that can actually be used against that person a lot with IHSS. They'll consider that like a predictable thing. They'll say, oh, well, if these behaviors only happen when the sun goes down, then you're not providing 24-hour supervision. You're just providing a little bit of extra supervision at night, which is silly. Thankfully, there's objections to this, but Teresa, ACL 1525 is where you can find the information and find info of modifications. Okay, yes, thank you, Teresa, for that. ACL 1525 is a great place for everybody to start when they're doing their journey on protective supervision. If you want to learn about protective supervision, ACL 1525, all county letter. This is a great tool to use to understand whether or not your loved one or this person you care for should get protective supervision. Dakota said what? Dakota said ACL 1525. Is that what you're saying, Teresa? Oh my gosh, it's already 12:50. We're almost out of time, guys. If you speak Spanish, stick around because I think Nicole or Myra will be going live at 1 o'clock in Spanish. So be sure to get ready for that. But I think that's about it. I really butchered our outline today, everybody. I'm sorry, but hopefully we stayed on task. Hopefully we understand the difference of ADLs and protective supervision and how they might kind of impact each other a little bit. But I really appreciate everybody being here today and sticking around, sharing the stream, liking it. That's always a big help for us to get more information out to more people. It's also fun to see you guys interacting with each other and answering each other's questions in the comments based on your own experiences and homework that you've done. It's awesome. It's great. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Like always, I hope you all enjoy your Friday. If it's raining, I don't know if it's raining where you're at, but hopefully you can enjoy the rain a little bit. It's snuggle weather, right? Get yourself some hot cocoa or some tea. It's like a pre-holiday season. Well, I guess we're technically in the holiday season, right? Do we consider this the holiday season? Halfway through November? I guess we do. Oh, we got a question. Valeria, I'll get to you real quick. Unrelated question. My friend who also has IHSS for her mom, my mom and her mom attend the same adult daycare center. My friend is a part of the union. Is that a good option for your Is that a good option to your services? So the union is it's going to serve people based on what you're looking for. So the union is not for everybody. If you want to pay for it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. It's not a right or wrong decision. It's based on what you value of what the union can provide. So the union is a great place for lobbying. It's a great place for making like they do great advocating for services. As far as like direct help with you, I've heard good things and bad things. And so some people still find it worth it. Some people don't want to place their a monthly stipend there. So it's up to you. Hopefully I understood your question correctly. Thank you, Cassie. Appreciate you. I hope you have a great weekend as well. I'm sorry, Rosita, excuse me. You guys both commented at the same time. Rosita, thank you. I appreciate you being here. And Cassie, thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. Thanks for listening to me ramble for 50 minutes, 53 minutes. I hope you all have a beautiful day, wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.